Good morning. Happy Friday. So I want to talk just a little bit about plateaus this morning. And I want to recognize, first and foremost, that most of us will hit a plateau at some point in training. I want to say all, but, we all know that, well, there is a saying that as soon as we start using superlatives, then we are inevitably wrong, right? Because all means all. So we're just going to go with most. Most of us will at some point in time hit a plateau in our training. And that plateau can happen for one of several reasons. But I want to let you know, first and foremost, that if this has happened to you, or if you're in this state right now, you're not alone, and there's a way through. And the part of the way through is understanding why you might be there. So again, let's go through three main reasons this could happen. And these are true if you've had a plateau in terms of like running pace, endurance on the mountain bike, fat loss, muscle gain, strength gain. Regardless of what flavor that plateau is or what domain that plateau exists in, excuse me, it's normal, right? And these three concepts would explain most plateaus. So one reason we might have hit that plateau is because we have been overreaching, and we have overreached for too long, or we have been over leveraging. So in terms of diet, this might mean, like, if your goal is fat loss, if you've been on a calorie restricted diet for a certain length of time, you are going to have, your body's going to adapt to that lower rate of caloric intake, and it's going to limit how much activity you get to put out, and it's going to slow down, it'll slow down your metabolism because the system's going to adapt. So if you're over leveraged in this way, right, you're in a caloric deficit, then you need to break the plateau by coming out of that caloric deficit for a little while, let your metabolism come back up, and then revisit that caloric deficit. If it is an endurance or a performance plateau because you have over leveraged, this would be saying you're doing a lot and you're doing it hard, and that was paying off for a while, and then you start to see diminishing gains, and then eventually you see flat gains, and you see negative gains, right? Start losing performance, again, because you're over leveraged. What's the solution? Take a week, deload, off a little bit, give the system time to adapt to the stresses you've already put in, and then re-engage with the harder training or the higher volume training. So one reason a plateau might happen is because we've over leveraged, we've over pushed a little bit, and that push was really important, right? We didn't fuck up. We just rode that wave a little bit longer than we could, and it's worth noting. It's worth kind of keeping a log. Like, was it a six week program? Like, were you on a plan for 6 weeks? It was working for 5, and the 6th week it stopped working. You know what you do in the future? Limit your programs to 5 weeks, at least for a while, and test that out, because maybe 5 weeks is the magic spot for you, and 6 weeks is a little bit too much. For someone else, 6 weeks might be great. So reason one is that you've over leveraged. Reason two that you might be in a plateau, or that you might be hitting a plateau, is that you have adapted to what you're doing, and it is no longer enough to stimulate, right? And this would be to say your program is going to keep you steady, but it's not challenging enough to create new gains. So what do? You probably still take a slight deload so you don't overdo it, and then you start ramping up the intensity, you start ramping up the time. When I work with runners, what we do is we create a multi-phasic program, and most phases of the program are 3, 4, or 6 weeks long, because that's a nice length of time to really focus on one thing. And we prioritize one thing at a time. We prioritize putting a lot more time on the feet. I'm thinking about my ultra runners right now. We prioritize putting a lot more time on the feet. Or we prioritize higher speed, and we just practice running fast. Or we are practicing our work in the hills, or we're practicing our work with our food and our gear. And sometimes we'll do two of these things at the same time. But again, we have to be thinking of, like, what's the next step? And so the second reason you've plateaued is because you've adapted to the work, and the work is no longer challenging enough to stimulate an adaptation. And it's really easy to confuse 1 and 2, right? One is the work is too challenging, and as a result, you're declining. And the other version is the work is no longer challenging enough, so you're not getting anything new out of it. So both of those things can happen. The third reason we might plateau, and this is where a year ago I've been like, yeah, you're crazy. Like, It's very woo-woo. But the third reason you might plateau is literally like up here. It's between your ears. And it is that something has shifted and there are other stressors that have accumulated in your life, and you're not managing overall stress well enough. And as a result, your nervous system has decided, your nervous system has taken all of the information that it gets. Because remember, the nervous system gets information that we are not consciously aware of. We read people's like orbital sockets to see if they're threats or if they're friendly. We hear sounds that we don't process consciously, but our brain our subconscious is hearing these sounds and is deciding, is this a threat? And if it doesn't rise to the level of a threat, it's not going to give it to you. If it rises to the level of threat, it's going to say, hey, Michael, like there's a mountain lion over there. We should probably, skedaddle. So these accumulated stresses can reduce your ability to recover. And so the workload might be fine. The workload might be great, but there is other kind of third-party factors that are keeping that work from working for you. Because, again, when you train, you're applying a stress. And the concept of training is apply a stress, recover from the stress, recover stronger rather, from the stress. That's how strength training works. That's how cardiovascular training works. And if we look at running performance, like with the exception of technique, which is a skill and practice component, the strength of running, the cardiovascular demands of running, the endurance side of running, all of these things get trained via stress. Technique technically gets trained via stress too, because what we do is we build the technique in a safe environment where we have full control, and then we start taking that technique into environments where we have less and less control. So we're applying stress to the technique, but it's not stressing the physiology in the same way. But if you have an excess of stress in your life because you're sleeping like shit, like I'm on like 5 hours and my allergies, maybe you guys can hear my nose. Like today is not a go kick-ass day. Like today is going to be like some base time, some base mileage on the bike. Like it's literally it. I'm going to be hanging out in my garage, probably watching something, watching some videos on YouTube. I've got a couple of webinars that I'm going through replays of about breathing actually. So that'll be my training today. Because what I know is that my system is under enough stress that it would not recover well from a hard training session. It can recover well from an easy training session, and that base mileage is going to do me some good. But it means I'm not coming back into the gym to like pull a 1 rep max deadlift today, even if that had been my plan. So 3 reasons you might have plateaued. Let's do these one more time. 1, you have over leveraged. You've been on a plan. It was working for a while. It was a good, hard, challenging, and the adaptation started coming, but then the adaptation stopped. And plateauing is by definition is when adaptations stop happening, right? You stop getting better for the work you're doing. So if you plateau because of that, you've got to reduce training volume. You need to deload. I'd suggest a week. It's just an easy marker, and like go for some walks, do some really easy stuff. But honestly, like if you're a runner, don't run. Like literally don't run. Don't jog. Don't do anything that looks like that, right? Go for a walk. Like hang out, have a whole bunch of sex, eat some good food, right? Like do those things and sleep a fuck ton. Please sleep a lot. Second reason we may have plateaued is because the work was the right volume of work, but then we actually adapted to it and the work is no longer challenging enough. So what we need to do is we need to make that work a little bit more challenging, probably again after a little bit of a deload, because it's really easy to just shift into the new thing too fast, right? Gradual ramp up. The third is that you are unable to recover because of total accumulated stress. Training is a stress. Lack of sleep is a stress. Fighting with your spouse is a stress. Morning, Cecil. Like having a new kid. I think part of the reason my body is really tired right now is it's trying to give me advanced notice of what it's going to feel like to have our son with us in something like 7 weeks. And that stress like total accumulated stress is going to mean you don't recover as well. And lack of recovery is lack of adaptation, and lack of adaptation is by definition being on the plateau. So think about this. If you have plateaued, apply these ideas, like consider these ideas for yourself. What resonates? What makes sense? Where do you think you are? And be honest about it, right? Because it's really easy to be like, man, I'm just too strong for that work. But often, I think it's actually the first thing that happens. It's the first and third that happen more often. Sometimes people need more challenging work, but often what we need to do is take a look at the full picture and say, can I truly recover from what I'm doing, or have I overreached? Have I overreached beyond what I can recover from? And that's it. And if you, like, I'd love to know how you guys are thinking about this. Like, I'd love to know what resonates with you. And yeah, and I'm just going to make a quick drop in note here. I have one of the coaches on my team, Will. We are relaunching a group nutrition or community group nutrition coaching program. So this is a 6-week program. We do weekly Zoom meetings. We do a whole bunch of information. This is really a reboot, like more so than like, we're going to tell you exactly what you need to eat. This is an experience for you to get some feedback on what you're doing and make some slight tweaks. Because here's the reality, right? Making a full 180-degree shift is really, really hard in our lives that are moving. Like if we're adults, if we're parents, if we have full-time jobs, it is really, really hard to take that tugboat and spin it around 180 degrees. What we want to do instead is take that tugboat, recognize where it's going, and like make 1-degree shifts. Right. And like, if you make enough 1-degree shifts, then all of a sudden your tugboat is going in the opposite direction, but it takes time, it takes patience. So that's why we do this 6-week program, but it's also a community program. So there's a lot of opportunity for people to get feedback from each other. And one of the ways that we can break a plateau is actually by eating better. Because if we have overreached and we are under recovering, then one of the factors that could be going into that is simply not eating enough, or not eating enough high quality foods, right? Not getting enough high quality nutrients. So if that's something that's of interest to you, just drop me a note down below, like put a comment, say like, hey, tell me more about the nutrition thing, or you can send me a PM. And either way, I'll get back to you with some information about that. More is going to come out about this in the next couple of weeks. We're planning to launch in 10 days, so you'll see a bunch about this too, even if you just hang out on the channel. That's it. If you've plateaued, 3 reasons why you may have: you're overreaching and you went too far, and now you're over leveraged and you can't adapt. You've got to come back. Second, maybe the work was the right amount of work, but now it's not challenging enough anymore. So you need to find the right way to dial up that intensity by a click or two. The third is accumulated stress. Total stress is greater than what you can recover from. The other things that are going on in your life are making it so that your physiology is not ready to adapt to the training load you're putting in. So again, you need to get the stresses under control. You need to take an honest accounting of all of that, control what you can, and then be realistic about what the training volume and training load can look like based on what you can recover from. Because if you train like a fucking monster, but then you live by drinking, I don't know, Monster energy drinks, it's not going to work. It's not going to work, right? If you absolutely need caffeine to function, if you need pre-workout to get in the gym and go do the stuff, if you need a bunch of sugar to like go get on the trail, you are probably over leveraged, either just physiology or with stress response. So let's get that shit under control. Okay, guys? Because you were made to do this, so let's do it smart. That's it. Have a great Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Peace.